So the reason some analysts are saying here is that it's just the overall market for electronics is weaker.
And there is the answer. It's nothing to do with Huawei.
That's right. And in fact, it's the opposite. Some analysts say that Samsung shipments, phone shipments, are going to be helped by the Huawei ban because ultimately, if Huawei can't sell, guess who's the #1 smartphone seller in the world? And it's Samsung. So longer-term outlook isn't quite as negative as this suggests. If you do look at the second quarter guidance, which is what we got overnight, down 56% for the operating profit. So Samsung expecting a profit of $5.6 billion. That is higher than the estimate of $5.1 billion, which is why shares are performing a little bit better than perhaps you might have expected with a number like this, still down about 1%. Part of that was because of this one-off reimbursement for its display panels, and analysts expect that was likely to Apple, but that was just sort of a one-off gain here.
Hang on. Dean, do you want to comment on this one? Not necessarily about DRAM prices, because apparently it's not your speciality.
Specialist for me, yeah.
Don't be like that. UBS, multitasking. But Sherry Kang out of Hong Kong was talking earlier, so you'd have heard the hit, about 20% plus declines in DRAM prices as well. This is about a global economic slowdown, which is being masked somewhere, isn't it? If we're seeing devices, given that we're in a 5G environment and everyone's adopting Internet of Things, and I keep hearing all these amazing buzzwords and everything, if DRAM prices are down 20%, is that not telling us something bigger about the world economy?
Well, there's certainly a number of indicators that are telling us that the global economy is slowing. I wouldn't just concentrate just on DRAM prices alone. There's a lot of factors that are going to affect DRAM prices. Supply, demand will clearly be a big influence there. But I think the point you made earlier, it is really just about what's actually happening to overall demand within the sector. And there's clearly some signs that the consumer is weakening.
But Elizabeth, I mean, how much of this is really down to the supply side of things? I take Steve's point that the demand side is one of the drivers of pricing, but really this is a supply issue, isn't it?
I mean, we've seen the supply issue playing out for several quarters, but it's a bit of that push-pull here in that when it comes to the smartphone market, there hasn't been enough of a trigger on the demand side to reinvigorate what has been, as Steve mentioned, sort of just this ongoing cycle. These phone companies have been banking on that reinvigorating factor, and we still haven't seen that, in addition to the slowness in the overall chip sales.
I'm not buying this. Sorry, I'm no expert on anything, but I'm a jack of many things. And I know when you're building a VLCC or a very large tanker, it's a long project as well. I know when you're putting up a huge tower block in the City of London, this takes many years as well, and you have to make a commitment. When you're making a chip, pretty much sure you can turn around the chip or turn off the supply of your chips pretty damn quickly as well if you see too much supply in the market. It ain't like a big, large infrastructure project when you're ordering 10,000 chips for your latest devices.
I think the counter to that argument is just how many components there are in any given chip. And we see this a little bit with the South Korea-Japan trade restrictions, which were put in place this week. Japan essentially saying it's going to be harder for South Korea to get some of the crucial components for chips. And if you think about it, it's a tiny little device, right? But there's so many various, different factors that go into that. And if you just look at the supply chain for a chip itself, it can be massively affected by any given kind of country restriction. And that's a little bit about what's playing out in the Samsung story here.
Now, in one other factor that I'm just reading a lot of the copy around the Samsung numbers is also the influence of Japanese curbs on exports to South Korea. And if you could maybe just expand on that and how that is affecting their results today.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. So we're seeing essentially this week, which is a little bit ironic, given after G20, all of the countries made this commitment. We're going to keep trade open. We want to maintain this environment. And then, of course, Japan comes in and essentially slaps some restrictions on, saying it's going to be more difficult for them to acquire these essential components for chips, especially for smartphones and memory chips. So ultimately, it's not looking like that's playing out in quite the way that people expected. And we're seeing how the global tensions in trade, not just between the US and China, can affect the supply chain across the industry.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.